There are many forms of transport in Australia. Australia is highly dependent on road transport. There are more than 300 airports with paved runways. Passenger rail transport includes widespread commuter networks in the major capital cities with more limited intercity and interstate networks. The Australian mining sector is reliant upon rail to transport its product to Australia's ports for export. Roads. Road transport is an essential element of the Australian transport network, and an enabler of the Australian economy. There is a heavy reliance on road transport due to Australia's large area and low population density in considerable parts of the country. Another reason for the reliance upon roads is that the Australian rail network has not been sufficiently developed for a lot of the freight and passenger requirements in most areas of Australia. This has meant that goods that would otherwise be transported by rail are moved across Australia via road trains. Almost every household owns at least one car, and uses it most days. Australia has the second highest level of car ownership in the world. It has 3 to 4 times more road per capita than Europe and 7 to 9 times more than Asia. Australia also has the third highest per capita rate of fuel consumption in the world. Melbourne is the most car-dependent city in Australia, according to a data survey in the 2010s. Having over 110,000 more cars driving to and from the city each day than Sydney. Perth, Adelaide and Brisbane are rated as being close behind. All these capital cities are rated among the highest in this category in the world. The distance travelled by car in Australia is among the highest in the world, being exceeded by USA and Canada. There are 3 different categories of Australian roads. They are federal highways, state highways and local roads. The road network comprises a total of 913,000 kilometres broken down into paved 353,331 kilometres, and paved 559,669 kilometres. Victoria has the largest network, with thousands of arterial roads to add. The majority of road tunnels in Australia have been constructed since the 1990s to relieve traffic congestion in metropolitan areas, or to cross significant water courses. Public transport in Australia, rising petrol prices and increasing traffic congestion are thought to be factors contributing to renewed growth and use of urban public transport. Commuter rail Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide have extensive electric commuter rail networks which have grown and expanded over time. Australian commuter rail typically operates with bidirectional all-day services, with Sydney and Melbourne systems operating with much higher frequencies, particularly in their underground cores. Sydney Trains operates the busiest system in the country with approximately 1 million trips per day. Melbourne Metro operates a larger system, albeit with a lower number of trips. Trams and light rail Trams have historically operated in many Australian towns and cities, with the majority of these being shut down before the 1970s in the belief that more widespread car ownership would render them unnecessary. Melbourne is a major exception and today has the largest tram network of any city in the world. Adelaide has also retained one tram service, the Glenelg tram, that runs from Adelaide city centre to Glenelg Beach. Trams had operated in a number of major regional cities including Launceston, Geelong, Ballarat, Bendigo and Rockhampton. Light rail was constructed in Sydney in the 1990s with the conversion of a disused section of the Metropolitan Goods Railway line into what is now the Dulwich line. A second CBD and South East Light Rail line is currently under construction and is due to open in 2019. Light rail has also been built on the Gold Coast and is in the planning stages for Newcastle, Canberra and Perth. Rapid transit Major cities in Australia do not have full-fledged rapid transit systems. Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Perth's commuter systems are all partially underground. Melbourne has plans for a new train service branded as a metro, but as it will interact with the suburban system and won't be grade separated from Footscray out, it will fall short of the criteria of a metro. The driverless Sydney Metro system is currently under construction, with the first line to be the North West Rail Link. This new line will connect to the existing Epping to Chatswood Railway line, which will be converted to rapid transit standards. It was also announced by Premier Mike Baird on June 10, 2014 that a Stage 2 extension will continue from Chatswood, through a second harbour crossing, the city centre, and onto the current Bankstown line. The North West Rail Link will be the first rapid transit system in an Australian city. Intra-City public transport networks The following table presents an overview of multimodal intra-city public transport networks in Australia's larger cities. The only Australian capital cities without multimodal networks are Canberra and Darwin, which rely entirely on buses. Canberra is planning a light rail line, which will link with existing bus services, and is expected to be operational in 2018. The table does not include tourist or heritage transport modes. Notes: P1, Capital Metro, planned for 2019, P2, Newcastle Light Rail, construction planned to commence 2016, P3, Max, planned for 2022, P4, Sydney Metro North West, construction began in 2014 with an estimated completion date of 2019, C1, Sydney Monorail, ceased in 2013. Intercity rail transport. The railway network is large, comprising a total of 33,819 kilometres of track, 3,719 kilometres broad gauge, 15,422 kilometres standard gauge, 14,506 kilometres narrow gauge and 172 kilometres dual gauge. Rail transport started in the various colonies at different dates. Privately owned railways started the first lines, and struggled to succeed on a remote, huge, and sparsely populated continent, and government railways dominated. Although the various colonies had been advised by London to choose a common gauge, the colonies ended up with different gauges. Interstate rail services The Great Southern Rail, operates 3 trains, the Indian Pacific, the GAN and the Overland. NSW-owned NSW Train Link services link Brisbane, Canberra and Melbourne to Sydney. Since the extension of the GAN from Alice Springs to Darwin was completed in 2004, all mainland Australian capital cities are linked by standard gauge rail, for the first time. Intrastate and city rail services There are various state and city rail services operated by a combination of government and private entities, the most prominent of these include V-Line, Metro Trains Melbourne, NSW Train Link, Sydney Trains, Queensland Rail operating long-distance Travel train services and the City Network in southeast Queensland, and Transway operating train and bus services in Western Australia. In Tasmania, TAS Rail operates a short-haul narrow-gauge freight system, that carries intermodal and bulk mining goods. TAS Rail is government-owned and is going through a significant below-and-above rail upgrades with new locomotives and wagons entering service. Significant bridge and sleeper renewal has also occurred. The Tasmanian government also operates the West Coast Wilderness Railway as a tourist venture over an isolated length of track on Tasmania's west coast. Mining railways 4 heavy-duty mining railways carry iron ore to ports in the northwest of Western Australia. These railways carry no other traffic, and are isolated by deserts from all other railways. The lines are standard gauge and are built to the heaviest U.S. standards. In 2006, a 5th iron ore railway is proposed by the Fortescue Metals Group, while a 6th common carrier railway is proposed to serve the port of Oakerdee just north of Geraldton. Cane railways In Queensland about 15 sugar mills have narrow-gauge cane tramways that deliver sugar cane to the mills. Pipelines There are several pipeline systems including, crude oil, 2,500 kilometers, petroleum products, 500 kilometers, natural gas, 5,600 kilometers, water, Perth to Kalgoorlie, Goldfields Water Supply Scheme, Morgan on the Murray River to Yola, Port Lincoln, Morgan-Yola Pipeline, Mannum on the Murray River to Adelaide, Mannum-Adelaide Pipeline, Oranga Western Channel, near Colbinabin to Bendigo and Ballarat, Goldfields Superpipe. Projects under construction or planned, Victoria, Goulburn River to Sugarloaf Reservoir, Melbourne, was connected to Melbourne in February 2010. Wimmera Pipeline, construction commenced in November 2006 and was completed in April 2010. Melbourne to Geelong pipeline, construction was completed in March 2012. Rocklands Reservoir to Grampian Headworks pipeline, construction commenced December 2008, expected completion in 2010. Waterways, between 1850 and 1940 paddle steamers were used extensively on the Murray-Darling Basin to transport produce, especially wool and wheat, to river ports such as Echuca, Manamajuwa. However, the water levels of the inland waterways are highly unreliable, making the rivers impassable for large parts of the year. A system of locks was created largely to overcome this variability, but the steamers were unable to compete with rail, and later, road transport. Traffic on inland waterways is now largely restricted to private recreational craft. Ports and harbours. Mainland General, Adelaide, Brisbane, Cairns, Darwin, Fremantle, Geelong, Gladstone, Port Lincoln, Mackay, Melbourne, Newcastle, Portland, Sydney, Townsville, Wollongong. Iron ore, Dampier, Port Hedland, Geraldton, Oakajee, proposed 2006, Esperance, Port Lincoln, possible 2007. Tasmania Burnie, Devonport, Launceston, Hobart. Merchant marine vessels. In 2006, the Australian fleet consisted of 53 ships of 1,000 gross register tons or over. The use of foreign registered ships to carry Australian cargoes between Australian ports is permitted under a permit scheme, with either single voyage permit or a continuous voyage permit being issued to ships. Between 1996 and 2002 the number of permits issued has increased by about 350%. Over recent years the number of Australian registered and flagged ships has greatly declined, from 75 ships in 1996 to less than 40 in 2007, by 2009 the number is now approaching 30. Marine unions blame the decline on the shipping policy of the Howard government which permitted foreign ships to carry coastal traffic. There have also been cases where locally operated ships have Australian flag from the vessel, registering it overseas under a flag of convenience, then hiring foreign crews who earn up to about half the monthly rate of Australian sailors. Such moves were supported by the Howard government but opposed by maritime unions and the Australian Council of Trade Unions. The registration of the ships overseas also meant the earnings of the ships are not subject to Australian corporate taxation laws. Aviation. Taking off, major Australian airlines operating domestic routes are Qantas, Jetstar, Virgin Australia, Tiger Airways Australia. There are many airports around Australia paved or unpaved. A 2004 estimate put the number of airports at 448. The busiest airports in Australia are Sydney Airport Sydney, New South Wales SYD, Melbourne Airport Melbourne, Victoria MEL, Brisbane Airport Brisbane, Queensland BNE, Perth Airport Perth, Western Australia PER, Adelaide Airport Adelaide, South Australia ADL, Gold Coast Airport Gold Coast, Queensland OOL, Cairns Airport Cairns, Queensland CNS, Canberra International Airport Canberra, Australian Capital Territory CBR, Hobart International Airport Hobart, Tasmania HBA, Darwin International Airport, Northern Territory DRW, Townsville International Airport Townsville, Queensland TSV. Airports with paved runways There are 305 airports with paved runways, over 3,047 m, 10, 2,438 to 3,047 m, 12, 1,524 to 2,437 m, 131, 914 to 1,523 m, 139, under 914 m, 13. Airports with unpaved runways There are 143 airports with paved runways, 1,524 to 2,437 m, 17, 914 to 1,523 m, 112, under 914 m, 14. Note, sourced from CIA World Factbook https, www.cia.gov Publications Index HTML. Environmental impact. The environmental impact of transport in Australia is considerable. In 2009, transport emissions made up 15.3% of Australia's total greenhouse gas emissions. Between 1990 and 2009, transport emissions grew by 34.6%, the second highest growth rate in emissions after stationary energy. Australia subsidises fossil fuel energy, keeping prices artificially low and raising greenhouse gas emissions due to the increased use of fossil fuels as a result of the subsidies. The Australian Energy Regulator and state agencies such as the New South Wales Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal set and regulate electricity prices, thereby lowering production and consumer cost. See also: Inland Railway, Loney Report. References. Sources: This article incorporates public domain material from the CIA World Factbook Document 2000 edition. External links: Australia Transport Statistics, Railway Maps, Driving Time Calculator for NSW, Road Map of Australia.